Pleasure to introduce Dr. FAWZI AMIN, Head of International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies for GCC cluster. He graduated from University of Cairo and obtained his specialty certificate in family medicine from American University of Beirut, his master's degree from Johns Hopkins in the States, his PhD from Leeds University in UK. He will talk about overview of COVID-19 in Gulf region. Please, Dr. Amin.
Thank you, Dr. Khalid. Thank you, Dr. Ali, for the invitation to be part of this distinguished meeting. If you allow me, I will stop the video so we'll focus on the presentation. I hope that I will give you an overview of the epidemiological pattern in the GCC compared to the world and some other countries. So in very easy and simplified way. You are aware that what's being reported in daily basis from all over the countries is reported about the number of cases, number of recovered cases, and the number of deaths, and the number of PCR tests. And we'll use this through this presentation. Source of data, of course, I'm taking from Johns Hopkins and also from WHO, specifically EMRO, and also the world meter down here, which gives me all the data that I will use in this presentation. From that data, we will able to make a cumulative numbers of reported cases and deaths. We'll also elaborate on the daily number and weekly number of reported cases and deaths. And then we'll go to the proportion of reported cases and deaths for each of the GCC countries. Then we'll talk about the epidemiological curve. And then the most important thing is when we are using by comparison between the country, we'll use the rate per million for the three parameters, the number of tests and the cases and the death. I thought the easy way to divide this presentation will have when the epidemic started. So this is, we'll try to answer what was the first case of the in the GCC and what was the first also death in GCC. Then we'll see what happened after 6 months from the beginning and what happens now in the month of November. I choose the June month for the 6 month and then November, which is this year, this month. I use, this is the beginning, where the cases started. You are aware that it was from China, the 1st December in 2019. What was the first case in the GCC? It was in UAE in 29 of January 2020. And from there, even before UK, which is followed later by UK, and during February, most of the GCC countries start to report the first cases of the COVID. The last country was Saudi Arabia to report the cases. Now the situation in death was a little bit different. So Bahrain was the first one, reported the first death. It was on 16th of March. And the last country reported death was Kuwait in the 4th of April. Now I developed this kind of flow sheet is just to answer the question. I will use it all through. From a total population of a certain country, we will see how many total cases. We'll try to answer that. And among those total cases, how many recovered? Those are simple questions that even ordinary people would like to know. And among those cases, which is reported, how many died? Now we'll elaborate a little bit is how many per day cases been reported, and how many per week, and how many per month, which makes this total. And then the same thing for the death per day and per week and per month. Let us start with the world data. So we're talking about now the world data, and this is the 6 months from the beginning of the COVID, which is the 27th of June. The world, of course, with a total population of 7 billion. Let us see what happened. How many people reported cases during June 20? That was 175,000 per day. And this built up to reach the total. Let us see what happened later. That's even 1 million per week. And it goes on to 5 million per week during the June for the world statistics. This is making a total of 10 million. So for the first time, if you recall, during June, the world reached 10 million cases. How many of them been recovered? Half of them, it's 5 million. Now, this is underreported. I think there is some countries, especially UK and Spain, they don't report the recovery, considering that once you have the disease, it will not be, there is no end for it. And then we could see how many been the death, but we'll start with how many per day in the world. So there was 4,500 deaths reported every day during the June. And it goes on to 30,000 per week and going to 135,000 per month, making a total of 500,000. This is represent 5% from the total of cases. And just remember that, because we'll go to another area where we compare the USA. So now I'm talking about USA during June. This is, again, 5 to 6 months from the beginning of the epidemic. US population, 330 million. There were 45,000 per day in USA reported during June, and it came up to reaching 2.5 million. So you remember that was in the whole world was 10 million, you can say, and the US at that time was 2.5 million. The recovery was around 1 million. The situation of the death, there were 700 deaths every day in US during June. And it came up with a total of 130,000 deaths. And again, it is 5% from the total of 2.5 million. Now we'll come to the situation of the GCC. So this is GCC during June, which is the 6th month after the epidemic. Our population in total, GCC, is 60 million. Saudi Arabia represents half of this. I'm using an approximate number to make the numbers easy, and you can understand it and remember it. There were 7,000 cases reported every day in June. And that's built up a total of cumulative total of 400,000 total cases until June. Out of those, 300 recovery, and the death was 50 deaths per day. Every week, there were 350 cases death reported in GCC, reaching to 1,400 cases death per month. The total was 2,500. Look at this percentage. It's only represent 0.5. There was in the world and also in the US was 5%. And that's very thin characteristic for the statistic in GCC. Let us see now what happens after 5 months. So let's bring us to November. So again, number of cases, number of recovery, and number of death. Let us see the changes that occur. Now we're still talking about the world, but now it is in November. With the 7 billion population, this is just the accumulated number. If you recall, there were in June was 175,000. Now it is 600,000 per day reported, reaching now to a 60 million cases. Even while we are speaking, today is reaching even 62. And among those is 40 million recovery. And there were 11,000 each day now in November. If you recall, it was just around 700. And this is reaching a total death of 1,400,000. This is represent 2.4%. So the percentage is less, but the number is accumulated. It was only 500,000 in June. Imagine here that was 10 million in the world, and it reached within 6 months, 60 million, almost 10 million every month. That shows you the speed of the changes that occur. Now, what's the situation in US? You can see it here. For the sake of time, I will go just directly to the GCC. So now we are talking about the GCC in November. Every day now it's 4,000. It was 7,000. And even in sometimes reach 8,000. So there is a little reduction in terms of reporting cases. So today we have 1 million cases. If you recall, it was just only 400,000 during June. The situation in this side with the death, where before it was 50 and sometimes it's reaching even 80. But the average was 50. So there is also a reduction in the number of deaths per day. And we reach for the first time again, 10,000. Now, if you look to the percentage, it's a little bit increased. It was 0.5. Now we are reaching 1% from the total cases. And the most remarkable thing, look to the recovery. It is 950,000. It's very high percentage of recovery. So 95% of the people is cured, and it's only remaining 5% either for death. So we'll move now. This is the table with all the details. I use an approximate numbers, but that's the detail and exact number. I will focus only in this area, the percentage wise, and I will just little bit focusing in it. If you look to the percentage of cases from the total population, now in the dashboard of WHO, they call them attack rate. This is very unique. Bahrain and Qatar is the highest percentage in the world after Luxembourg. So it is 5% almost of the population, considering this number, been reported for the cases. And the recovery, look at this. This is all above 90. That's all in the GCC. Look to the world and US is even less than 60. And also the other thing is the percentage of death and total cases. From the total cases, very low percentage in GCC. So it is less than 1%, while in the world is more than 2%. Now, if you look just to the graph, that is the world cumulative report. So look to the the speed and the increase and the this is from the beginning, and June will be here somewhere here, and this is November. And now if the whole world is experiencing an increased number. Now it's in GCC is a little bit flat. That's the feature of the GCC. The death is similar way. You can see how much is this going and growing. This is November now, and we are a little bit slower. If we break the thing in details by countries, then we could see here, we are talking now about the cases reported among countries in November here at the end. And you could see this is Saudi Arabia, this is Emirates, and this is Kuwait, and this is Bahrain, and this is Qatar, and this is Oman. Saudi Arabia representing a big number, but that does not mean it is more cases, because this is just having more type of number of population. The percentage, the proportion is in Saudi Arabia, in the cases is 36%, and the other distributed among the GCC country. We'll move to the death. Again, it's the similar picture. I'm rushing quickly because of the time, but you could see the burden of the death is mainly in Saudi Arabia. 63% among the reported death in GCC is from Saudi Arabia. Let us move now to the daily new cases. You could see the world is also again continuous like this, while we are having a little bit curve going down. And if we move to the daily death, it is again similar situation in the world, and in the GCC is less. Now, the weekly also give the same pattern. This is the added number of the cases per week. And you could see here, the world is really shooting up, while we have the peak before, and now we are coming down. Very good news. Now, if we look to the death, again, similar way, this is going up, we are going a little bit down. This is the epidemic curve. In Saudi Arabia, you can see that it is coming down, and in Qatar, very clearly, there is no second wave from the data until now. So we move to the Kuwait. It goes down, but is remaining, in and off. And Bahrain also going up and then becoming down now. But the most important, I would like to also clarify in the Emirates and Oman. Now, Emirates has experienced even coming down, and suddenly it's going up, and now it started to go down. But that's like an increase here, and we could use this in the discussion later on. And this is the situation of Oman. Also, at the end, it's become changing before the end. The last thing, which is the comparison between the different countries, and this is for 3 rates. This is the number of the test rate in 1,000 and per million population. You could see Emirates and Bahrain was the highest rate of doing tests, the rate per million in June. And if we go to the other rate, which is rate per cases, Qatar was from the beginning was the highest. That was again in June. And if we move for the last one, which is the death cases per million population, again in June, Kuwait was the highest, which is 81 per 1,000 population. Now, I'll bring you to the comparison, what happened, and this is actually the last slide. Now we are comparing June and November. So Bahrain, the Emirates and Bahrain was the highest, and they remain also in November the highest. The other GCC is still increasing the number. Now, as regard the cases, which is here, Bahrain also start to reach this number. So Bahrain is now 5% of the population in terms of cases per million population. And the change, which is also striking, is we said in June was Kuwait. Later on, Oman is extended, and now Oman is even higher than the world level of the death rate. So those are the changes that happens in the GCC. So the epidemic pattern in GCC, we can say high in terms of the test, high in terms of cases, and low relatively in death, except Oman, which I hope that it also will be reduced in very soon. So I stop here. That was, I hope that you get the overview about the GCC. Thank you very much.